our introductions. Let's limit it to let's limit all our engagements right now to the chat box, please.
Okay, hi Jumolo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
It's on. My mic is on.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
We can hear.
Okay, they can hear me. Okay, all right. Okay, it's because I can't hear you guys. All right, okay. Okay, so let me just go on. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to the inaugural EcoJustice Workshop. I am very delighted to be here, and I would like to give a special welcome to our distinguished guests, esteemed participants, and of course, the friends and advocates of the environment. Today's workshop is a gathering that we have dedicated to equip every one of us with the tools and the knowledge to address Africa's most pressing challenge, if we may, and that is environmental crimes and justice. So we expect that in this workshop, because as we know, environmental crimes and violations are not abstract issues. They are actually real, they are pervasive, and they are deeply entwined with our daily lives, especially across our continent, which is Africa. So we expect that in this particular workshop, we'll all be equipped with the tools that we need to understand, first of all, what environmental rights and violations are, especially within the African context, and as well to equip us with the cutting edge tools and technologies that we have put in place to tackle this issue. So we at Growth Africa, we are very proud to unveil EcoJustice Africa, which we'll be doing in this workshop. And this initiative is anchored. I don't want to go into too much details because that's not for me, but of course, it's on our Green Growth Watch mobile app. And we would handle that with the EcoJustice situation that's based here in Abuja. And as Green Growth Africa, this initiative, it demonstrates our commitments to ensure that we as Africa, we are able to push beyond this, these issues of environmental crimes and bring actionable solutions, especially through citizen-driven initiatives, excuse me. So to every participant here, we want you to know that you are at the heart of this initiative and your work is very essential to shape the future for environmental justice, which is a reality for all of us. So I just want to speak to everyone to ensure that they seize this opportunity to not just participate, but to learn, collaborate, and to commit to action. So that's it from my end. Once again, I welcome you all to this historic workshop, and thank you for being a part of our movement that champions this justice equity in the space of sustainability for our planet. So that's it from me. I look forward to more of the conversation and to hearing from everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that wonderful address. Thank you very much. So going straight into it, I'm going to invite one of our guests, our speakers, who is going to give our keynote address. I'm so sorry in advance if I do not pronounce your name correctly, but I'll try my best. So we have Yamid Dagnet. Oh, awesome. She's the Senior Vice President International for Natural Resource Defense Council. So before I bring her up, I would like to read our bio. Please stay with me. Yamid Dagnet leads the vision and strategy for Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC's international program. Maximizing its impact, prior to NRDC, she worked in philanthropy, raising significant support for climate adaptation projects and efforts to address losses and damages from climate change She focused on bridging diverse voices for just energy and industrial transitions, promoting accessible, sustainable development and climate finance, and supporting just green transition. Previously, she served as the director of climate negotiations at the World Resources Institute, focusing on equitable implementation of the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. Dagnet holds a master's in engineering from the University of Technology of Compiègne, France, and she is currently based in Washington, D.C. Please make welcome Miss Yamid Dagnet. Thank you very much for coming. We'll have you now.
Thank you very much. I would like first to thank the organizers for giving me the honor, to be with you. It was a very cheerful beginning to hear all those voices saying, "I'm here," from all parts of the continent. And I'm saying with a lot of humility, being a daughter of the diaspora. I am originally from Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. And I would like to start by first, paying tribute to my ancestors, and it with that strength, acknowledging, that we have a legacy from them, and we don't want to borrow the legacy of our youth and the future generation that I'm going to make this speech. And thanks again, to the fight, that Green Growth Africa and all of you in this call are doing. So, actually, I'm going to start by acknowledging that as we speak, there are hearings at the International Court of Justice on the obligations of states in respect of climate change that are making history. For the first time, about hundreds of states and stakeholders are being heard. The proceedings will be used by the International Court of Justice to issue an advisory opinion on the obligation of states under international law to protect the climate system. Let's pause a bit. Let's remind ourselves that, this initiative was not coming from the big powers. It was coming from students, from the small islands of Vanuatu in the Pacific that garnered a lot of support, from small islands all over the world, from all least developed countries, mainly from the African continent. And this is not happening, just in, without, just like that. There's actually, it is the climax of a series of not only climate-related court cases, but also a deeper engagement of legal scholars and judicial bodies with matters related to the environment, more broadly speaking. Indeed, non-governmental organizations have been going to court and have been calling for enhanced climate action in particular, but not only. And I wanted to first remind you of a few. First, we've seen the youth doing that. Like the 21 of them asking in September this year, the US Supreme Court to revive novel lawsuits claiming that the US government's energy policies violate their rights to be protected from climate change. You also had the youth in South Africa. You probably know that there's been young campaigners who've just run a landmark climate case to stop new coal power in South Africa. South Africa's High Court has overturned the government's plans to add a new coal-fired plant worth 1,500 megawatts to the nation's electricity grid. And this is a landmark climate case where the judge said that the plan was unlawful and invalid because the government failed to consider the potential impact on children's rights. We have seen elderly women in Switzerland this year bringing a climate case for the first time at the European Court of Justice. We've seen the UN General Assembly, which has adopted 2 years ago a resolution that recognized the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And we even have seen some jurisdictions that went further by passing nature rights laws, like in Ecuador, for the first country to recognize the rights of nature in its constitution in 2008. We had Panama that joined Ecuador, and Bolivia as a country that recognized the rights of nature also at national level. And let's not forget all the First Nations, indigenous people that have tribal laws that may be undercut, but are giving examples and make them some of the true heroes of a transition to a decarbonized, safer world and more resilient, in the face of climate change. So most recently, we also had the Tribunal of the Law of the Seas that delivered in its advisory opinion that confirmed that states have to prevent, reduce, and control marine pollution from greenhouse gas pollution and protect and preserve the marine environment from climate change impacts and ocean acidification. So we don't even stay just on the land. It's also a matter of the ocean and affecting all frontline communities that are fighting to keep their land rights, but also the fishermen, from forests, to our coast. Another advisory opinion is pending at the Inter-American Court of Human Rights on the individual and collective obligation of states to respond to the climate emergency within the framework of international human rights law, and specifically under the American Convention on Human Rights and other American treaties. So you may ask, why do I take the time to do that? Well, have you all realized that all of this is happening this year? You can say yes or no in the chat. But I have to say that even if I have sponsored, when I was in philanthropy, some of these efforts, I have advocated for some of that while I was at the World Resource Institute when the students of Vanuatu pushed, for, the healings that we have today. It got lost. And it's only today after this, that, this workshop gave me the opportunity to reflect and to think about all those efforts. And guess what? It makes me smile. It gives me hope. So, and this is important at a time when we are very wrapped up by the geopolitical storms, the elections in the US, for example, the COPs that have left a lot of developing countries and vulnerable communities quite disappointed. And where the multilateral process itself has been criticized as being not fit for purpose, especially to protect, the most vulnerable. So, but, all of that, reminds me that while we need all hands on deck, it was clear when we adopted the Paris Agreement, it also was accompanied by an action agenda, that really forced the groundswell of action for non-state actors. Well, today, with those hearings, we really, remember that we need to look at the whole value chain of our economies, of our societies, and the role of the judiciary, of the legal, supply chain is important. And we need to remember that the multilateral regime alone will not get us where we need to be at the pace and scale required. They play a critical role, to continue to set targets, norm setters, and hold governments accountable. That's really, what they are for, and, provide a rhythm, by, in holding those governments accountable. But when it comes to implementation, there's no multilateral borders. Climate has to be mainstreamed to all sectors of the economy, to the different, not just within the climate conventions. And this is important because as we hear the hearings, a lot of the developed countries and most polluter and biggest polluters argue that it's going to be enough to just rely on the Paris Agreement, knowing that many of them are falling so short, to fulfill their requirements. So the other part of this conference is about evidence. And, as we see this, it's important to remember, and I think it was alluded, at the very beginning, that, the more than 2,100 land and environmental defenders were killed, globally over the past decades. And an estimated 196 land and environmental defenders were killed in 2023 alone around the world. So most of the figures, are good for Latin America. For the second year running, we know that Colombia has been, according to the evidence collected, I've seen the highest numbers of killings worldwide, with a record of 79 defenders killed last year, followed by Brazil, Mexico, Honduras. So we've got a good set of data. But I was thinking, what about Africa? We don't have necessarily, the exact, figures to highlight what's going on in the whole continent. And this is where evidence matters. So to shape, inform, and counter, those crimes, we still need to collect more, about it, and to also strengthen, the 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 legal system in each of the jurisdictions. And evidence is not only important, to gather those numbers, on and we've seen there's still, when it comes to energy, there was only very few papers that are written by Africans that were peer reviewed and therefore used by the IPCC. There's a lot of papers about Africa, but not so many written by Africans. And that needs to change. The other dimension is, the fact that, evidence not connected to pathways, not connected to implementations, to governance, is going to fall short to deliver what it is supposed to be, collected for. And so we need to really, do a lot of work to connect the dots, within the ecosystem of actors that we do have, to make sure that evidence fulfill its role to really be the game changer by connecting it to the policy. And then my last point is how to connect it to communication and highlighting, the core benefits, to really still bring some of the very high numbers, technocratic recommendations to the people, and to go further into our outreach strategy, but also to really be humble, as a climate community, which has been seen as being, yes, on the righteous and giving, lessons that, yes, this is what has to be made. But sometimes there are unintended consequences. And for the continent, this is really important as it marches towards, 2063 at, vision and agenda. And, when we see, some presidents coming, from outside Africa to make some deals on critical minerals to make sure that they do have some of the access, it needs to be done, in the respects, of the human rights of the people. So I'm going to finish right there, right here, because I'm looking.
Alfred, please mute your mic. Yami, please go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was just finishing. I don't know, when you my last point was, that I'm looking forward uh, to hearing from the rest of the workshop and other, panelists, participants, to see how we move forward from it.
Thank you very much, Yamid. Thank you for that awesome keynote address. One major thing that I have to take away is that the conversation around climate change has to be mainstreamed. We can't keep limiting it, and it has to be mainstreamed. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to quickly recognize our guest here before we move on to the next session. Okay, so here I have Professor Damilola Olawi, SAN. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. I have Mrs. Ibirunke Olubamiche. Thank you very much for joining us. I have Judy Bross, the Executive Director for the North American Association for Environmental Education. Thank you very much, Judy, for joining us today. Professor Damilola Olawi is the UNESCO Chair at the Environmental Law and Sustainable Development. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. Ms. Ibirunke Olubamiche is National Coordinator for the Global Environmental Facility for Small Grants Fund. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am. So next we'll be going, please pardon me 1 second. Please mute your mics. Everybody, please mute your phone. Thank you for your cooperation, everyone. Please let's stay muted. Let's stay muted. So next, we'll be receiving a goodwill message from the Honorable Commissioner for Agricultural and Rural Development, Kwara State, Nigeria, in person of Honorable Oloruntoyosi Thomas. Before I bring her forward, I'd like to read her bio very shortly. Honorable Mrs. Oloruntoyosi Thomas is the Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development in Kwara State, Nigeria, with over 20 years of cognate experience in social development, business advisory, and financial management. Previously, she served as Senior Special Assistant to the Governor on Non-Governmental Affairs, a magna cum laude accounting graduate from Harvard University, Washington, D.C. She also holds an MBA and a financial management certificate from Johns Hopkins University. She's an indigene of Isin local government area. Honorable Mrs. Thomas is a dedicated public servant, celebrated for her visionary leadership, and she's happily married with children. Please join me as I welcome Honorable Oloruntoyosi Thomas. Thank you very much, Ma, for joining us today.
Thank you. Okay, I've been unmuted. Good afternoon, everyone from Kwara State in North Central Nigeria. I know that we're all across the globe, so it might not be afternoon for some people, but it is afternoon for me over here. So permit me to say good afternoon, everyone. I'm truly honored to be part of this very, very important gathering. And I was particularly thrilled by some of the words that I've heard today when I think the first person who spoke talked about this being a workshop, talked about collaboration. And from my own end, it's going to be a short speech, very short one. And it's really just to congratulate everyone for the amazing work that they're doing, because everybody that's on here, I'm sure that they're making an impact in their world, wherever they are. and to also congratulate and celebrate and appreciate the convener of this program for creating this platform for great minds to come together to dialogue and again collaborate and then make more impact. So thank you for creating this platform, and to all of the participants. I just want to put the word out there. Let us take advantage of what we have. I know that a lot of us are always busy attending similar programs like this, but I totally believe in the convener of this program that this is going to be a different one. So I want us to know that this is a different platform. We all have been carefully selected to be a part of this, and let's make this different. Let's make use of this platform in a way that we've never, with any such opportunity in the past. Let's ask of them, of different things. It's a learning platform. It's a platform to network. Let's do just that. And also, to the conveners, I just want to ask, let's have clear steps. Let this be different. Let this group be felt, globally, everywhere where we all are. So I'll be expecting that we would have a clear next step from this. And I'll be expecting that would also have some form of accountability so that everybody here, is living up to whatever is expected from them in terms of contributing their own quota to the change and the impact that we want to see in our world. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you for allowing my voice to be heard on this platform. And once again, let's all go there. Let's continue to do what we're doing. Let's continue to do it better, and let's go and shake our world. So thank you all. And I wish us all a successful deliberation and wonderful outcome from this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you, Honorable Oloruntoyosi Thomas, for that goodwill message. I believe we all agree that it's important to collaborate and network and have clear next steps so that we can take actionable steps for the goal and the purpose for which we are gathered here today. So moving on to the next session, I'll have Professor Damilola Olawi-San, and you'll be speaking on environmental crimes within the African context, specifically definition, the scale, and the extent to which we experience this in Nigeria. So I'll be reading his bio also. Presenter, are you helping me, or should I just present myself? Okay, I'll go ahead to just read from here. Please hold on a second. Okay, thank you. Professor Damilola S. Olawi-San is a UNESCO Chair on Environmental Law and Sustainable Development at Ahmad bin Khalifa University, Qatar, and Director of the Institute for Oil, Gas, Energy, Environment, and Sustainable Development at Afe Babalola University, Nigeria. He is a renowned scholar. He authored Environmental Law in Arab States, awarded the 2023 ASIL Certificate of Merit, and won the 2024 His Excellency George Wiram Tree International Justice Award. He is an independent expert on the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights. He is the Vice Chair of the International Law Association globally and the President of the Nigeria ILA branch. He's also the Chairman of the International Bar Association Serial Academic Advisory Group. He is the Chairman of the MBA Legal Education Committee and Chair Association of Environmental Law Lecturers in the Middle East and North African University. He holds a doctor in philosophy from Oxford, LLMs from Harvard and Calgary, and is admitted as a barrister and solicitor in Alberta, Ontario, and Nigeria. Please join me as I welcome Professor Olawi Damilola. You're welcome, sir, as you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I would like to share my screen, please. If you can enable that, I would appreciate. And I must start by congratulating the organizers, especially Dr. Adeleke of the Green Growth Africa, as well as the members of the planning team for bringing us together to discuss this important topic on the issue of environmental crime. And I was very pleased to listen to the keynote speech earlier given, which already talks about some of the developments aimed at protecting our environment. And one of the innovative approaches that has been suggested at the international level is the idea of criminalizing pollution. So if you pollute the environment, the idea that it should actually be a criminal offense that should lead to perhaps even a jail term or something like that, rather than this whole approach of almost like pleading with people to protect the environment, which has not worked in many contexts. So I'm going to talk about the progress made in this approach of criminalizing environmental degradation and some of the challenges that remain and how we can all be at the forefront of addressing those challenges. And of course, to understand that, it's good to reflect on what is the environment and what is the environmental crime. That will be the starting point. Of course, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, environment is anything but me. So anything around me is my environment, So the environment consists of air, land, forest, natural resources, things that are in our surrounding that make life livable. And they also hold economic value. So the idea of environmental crime, as the EU recently released a directive in which they tried to criminalize environmental pollution. And if you look at the image, this was from the earlier directive of 2008. Now they've updated it to the 2024. And it talks about, it defines environmental crime as any unlawful conduct that causes death of or serious injury to persons, substantial damage or considerable risk of substantial damage to the environment. So any unlawful, any act that pollutes the environment or makes the environment unlivable for plants, animals, or humans is seen as environmental crime. There's also an international organization known as the Environmental Investigation Agency, and their definition is similar. Environmental crimes can be defined as illegal acts which directly harm the environment. And this will include illegal trade in wildlife, smuggling of ozone-depleting substances, illicit trade in hazardous waste, unreported fishing, illegal logging, and the likes. And many of these examples given are real in many parts of Africa. We see natural resources being taken away illicitly. We see the transboundary movement of waste, pollutants being moved to our continent. Where those of us that were around, we will never forget in the cocoa dumping incident, which led to loss of lives in Nigeria, and we've seen that dumping in many parts of Africa, in Somalia, and of course, leading to outcry. So this definition will cover that. And most recently, we have the independent expert panel that tried to introduce ecocide as part of the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. They tried to push for the International Criminal Court to recognize ecocide as a crime, just as we have homicide. And they define ecocide as an unlawful or wanton act committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment. So you'll see that all these definitions have something in common. Any act that defiles the environment, that makes it unusable for humans and plants and animals, should be criminalized. That is what they are saying, rather than the current approach of using fines or going to court to claim damages. If you commit environmental pollution, it should be a criminal offense that will attract imprisonment and that would attract even other severe punishment. That's what this movement is trying to achieve. And we can then ask, what are the drivers of these environmental crimes? Why do we still have a prevalence of environmental crime across Africa. Of course, one of the key drivers is the unprecedented rise in militancy. I talked about our natural resources being stolen and taken by armed groups. And studies show that Africa loses nearly $100 billion a year to illicit traffic of oil and gas resources. That is an environmental crime because oil and gas is part of natural resources. Now, in Nigeria, for example, where I'm from, the country loses more than 470,000 barrels of crude oil per day, which is equivalent to $700 million monthly and about $32 billion every year to militancy and oil theft. You see, oil theft in different parts of the country. And like I like to say, oil is not like a tomato or biscuit that you can just put in your pocket. It's a criminal gang that is overseeing this. And one of the other drivers related to that is the involvement of the military that should protect these resources. Studies show that in many parts of Africa, in DRC, in Nigeria, in Niger, in many parts of the continent, the military that should be responsible for protecting natural resources are often involved in the illicit exploitation of these resources, leading to environmental pollution and leading to illicit trade in natural resources, which comes under the definition of environmental crime. Of course, we also have increased pressure, as the keynote speaker mentioned, climate change and all biodiversity loss and the planetary emergencies, leading to competition for natural resources. And when you have competition for natural resources, then some natural resources will be stolen, will be taken illicitly. So the problem of climate change, as the keynote speaker mentioned, must be taken very seriously, because the more the climate changes, the more there will be water scarcity, there will be energy shortage, there will be food shortage, which will lead to increased competition, which will lead to crime. So we must see climate change as an emergency that it is. And of course, another factor, another driver is the growth in population, rising population and forced migration patterns across the continent. When the population grows rapidly, then the people that need to use the resources increase, which leads to more pollution, which leads to more migration. And we see that many of the environmental crimes in some parts of the continent, for example, in Nigeria, many of the environmental crimes are often directly linked to migration from Niger, from Central African Republic, from Cameroon. And of course, you can say the same in Kenya, whereby there's documented studies showing that some of the movement from countries surrounding in that region could be responsible for a rise in population, as well as rise in environmental crime. So these drivers show us the task ahead and the things we need to overcome if we really, really want to advance the idea of avoiding and preventing environmental crime. Now, despite these drivers, and as a result of these drivers, international law, there's a wide range of instruments talking about how to prevent environmental crime. You have the International Convention on the Suppression of Terrorism, Financing of Terrorism, the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, UN Convention Against Corruption. We have the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. All of these instruments talk about the need to ensure transparent and responsible exploitation of natural resources. When natural resources are taken illicitly, for example, those that do oil and gas bunkering is associated with pollution because you're trying to take oil illicitly and then you pollute the environment. You're trying to take elephant tusk and animals illicitly, rosewood, which is another one used for luxury furniture, which is often stolen from Nigeria. And as a result of trying to steal rosewood so that you can take it to China and make a lot of money, then you are causing environmental pollution because you are doing what we call illicit tree falling and the likes. So you see that these international instruments try to go to the root to say we need to ensure transparent and responsible use of natural resources. Of course, even at the African level, the African Mining Vision, the African Commission's resolution of 2013 talks about the need to avoid the illicit flight of capital from Africa. The 2012 resolution elaborates guidelines to promote the transparent use of natural resources to ensure that resources are taken in the right manner that does not pollute the environment and that allows for the development of our people. And even at the domestic level, you see that a lot of countries have codified environmental crime. France, Georgia, Armenia, Ukraine, Belarus, Ecuador, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. What surprises me is that there is no African country on the list. There's no African country that has specifically recognized ecocide or environmental crime in its law. I mean, in Nigeria, we have a number of laws on the environment. We have NESRA, we have we even have the criminal code, but they do not specifically mention environmental pollution as a crime. They do not specifically mention climate change, for example, as a crime. And that leads me to wonder that why is the law slow in Africa to respond to this development? France just 3 years ago joined the list, and I hope to see more African countries recognizing that the approaches of the past have not worked. So there is a need for greater legislation that recognizes the crime of ecocide. And I say there is a need for that good governance approach, which is having clear and comprehensive laws that that are necessary to advance natural resource and environmental security. And some of the elements of this law will include having a national strategy to prevent extremism, which is responsible for environmental crime, having early warning systems to monitor, and better forecast. And the keynote speaker mentioned lack of data, which is a big problem. And so having laws on this, having laws on disarmament, demobilization, reintegration, all of that would also help to reduce the tendency of the same actors that are responsible for sabotage, doing it over and over again. And of course, there is a need to ensure that to prevent dispute by including everyone in the management of natural resources. So this idea of social inclusion, the more people see that natural resources are used for the betterment of their lives, the less they will have the intention to steal them. So addressing issues of corruption, addressing issues of human rights violation, ensuring that whenever there is a dispute, there is a mechanism to resolve them, will help in advancing this good governance of natural resources to reduce environmental crime. And I've mentioned in my talk some of the gaps, lack of legislation, which we need to address, poor data collection, the weak or archaic legislation that do not mention some of these human rights or gender dimensions, and of course, lack of capacity. Many of our security agencies that should prevent environmental crime perhaps do not have the resources to do so. So it is important to ensure good governance in a way as a key pillar of preventing environmental crime. So in conclusion, it's quite clear that without that clear justice or human rights perspective that recognizes environmental protection as an imperative and that clearly criminalizes environmental crime, then you see that resource development will continue to exacerbate environmental pollution, social exclusion, police brutality, and the likes that we've seen in many parts of Africa. So there is a need to update our laws to keep them in line with international best practices, including promoting early detection and measurement, data collection, ensuring that inclusion and participation is reinforced so that people are not even inclined to resort to environmental crime. And of course, there is a need for capacity development. And that is why this workshop is really important. And we must commend the organizers for bringing us together to think about how to improve capacity on environmental protection, how to advance environmental justice in line with some of the international best practices. And I hope that Green Growth Africa will be supported to continue this initiative. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to join you, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lawi, for that beautiful session. I'm sure a lot of you have questions. I'm already getting nudges for questions. We'll take all questions after the third session. Please just keep your questions. I'm sure Professor would be happy to respond to your questions. I'd like to recognize the presence of Dr. David McNair. I learned that he has joined us. He's the Executive Director for Global Policy at the One Campaign. Thank you very much for joining us from Dublin today. So I would like to go to our next speaker, and who is Mrs. Ibironke Olubamishi. I'd like to read a bio before I bring her up. So Ibironke Olubamiche is the pioneer national coordinator of the Global Environment Facility Small Grants Program, implemented by UNDP Nigeria. Formerly, she headed the Technical Programs Department and later Strategic Operations at the Nigerian Conservation Foundation. She also coordinated Nigeria's community-based REDD Plus program. With over 25 years of experience in conservation, environmental management, and grant administration, Ibironke has overseen 170 plus projects across 200 communities in 29 states. She has built the capacity of 130 plus CSOs in proposal writing, project implementation, resource mobilization, knowledge management, partnership building, mentorship, career development, and advocacy campaigns. Please, everyone, join me as I welcome Ibironke Olubamiche. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you so much for the privilege. Thank you. I want to say thank you so much for the privilege of joining you at this meeting. I'm sorry I'm in the office, but the light here is a little bit not bright. I hope you can see me despite. Okay, all right. So I want to first appreciate Dr. Adeleke, the convener, and his team for this very important meeting. And it was a privilege for me to have a chat with him briefly recently when he was telling me of the great work that Growth Africa is doing. And so I was so much, I find it a privilege for me to come and speak at your meeting. And just like the keynotes, the keynote speaker mentioned, and also the honorable from Kwara State mentioned, I really wish that after this meeting, there will be concrete actions that we will take to actualize whatever that we have agreed and discussed on this meeting. So I want to appreciate everyone. And so, yes, I think my case, what I see from here is for me to speak about what has been maybe some of the efforts that we have made on the ground to address some of these issues. And be that as it may, that the professor of law has actually done so much justice to this issue of environmental crimes. And I just wanted, and then of course, I want to welcome everyone from all over the world. I'm sorry, I've almost forgot about that. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening from wherever you have joined. So the environmental crimes, I felt that the professor has done a good justice to the issue. But I want to ask some of us that are from Nigeria, if you remember, I hope, because it was very pivotal in Nigeria, what is termed the cocoa waste. If anybody heard about, have learned about that, because that was actually what led into the creation of the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, which now metamorphosed into the Federal Ministry of Environment. And that was the issue that was the case that brought the issue of environmental crimes into the fore in Nigeria. And just like the professor of law has also said, unfortunately, not much has actually been done. And like I used to tell people, I am an incurable optimist. So always thinking that something good will happen somewhere at a corner. So that is why it is important for us to continue to talk about it and take action as necessary. Up till today, the people of cocoa, the cocoa waste, let me just maybe briefly for the benefit of those who didn't hear about it. It was a dumping of some very dangerous materials at a place called Cocoa in Nigeria, somewhere in Nigeria, and it was causing it caused a lot of havoc and deaths and all manner of, aside environmental degradation, even deaths. It was done by an Italian company in Nigeria. And up till today, the people of Cocoa still call it the drums of death. which is an issue that still haunts them till today. So we cannot continue to sweep these things under the carpet. And fortunately also because this issue, there is now, the world is called a global village now. So the more reason why we think that there is more opportunity for us to gather up support to be able to address some of these issues that we have identified. So why from the, what we do actually in Nigeria, my office will support civil society organizations to address environmental issues from the community point of view. And SDP is in 127 countries in the globally, and almost about 52 countries in Africa alone. So what we do is to support civil society organizations to carry out environmental initiatives in communities. And most of the times, some of these things are bordered on environmental crimes that people have committed or are still committing. And of course, when we are talking about these sustainable development goals, I just choose to say that none of the goals can actually be achieved without addressing environmental crimes. Because if you talk of poverty, if you talk of education, if you talk of the hunger, if you talk of life on land, if you talk of life in waters, if you talk of partnership, which is the 17th SDG goal, everything has to do with the environment. Like the professor said, somebody gave a definition of the environment is everything but you. So everything has to do with the environment, and it is important for us to keep talking about it and keep doing one thing or the other about it until we see positive changes as necessary. So environmental crimes, of course, comes in various forms. We have the example that I just gave. Then there have been cases of even some international fishing companies coming to Nigeria waters to come and fish without maybe, of course, definitely it means that they have had to maybe compromise some of the nationals to be able to do the heinous crime of fishing until nothing is left there. And then not just the fishing, but also even the trail of what they left behind has been a big issue that Nigeria has to deal with. When you talk of wildlife, of course, I remember a case recently where one of our civil society organizations that we work with was called by the ministry. Somebody imported cartons loads, not less than 20 cartons load of different types of snakes into Nigeria. I think they wanted to use Nigeria as a transit point for it to go to another place, and then it was seized. Then, of course, the government wanted this snake expert, who is one of our grantees, to address the issue. But of course, so it brings me to, of course, the case somehow did not end up the way we wanted it to end up. So we have a lot like that. Logging is another issue that we termed as environmental crime. We have a very big biodiversity hotspot in Nigeria, in Cross River State. And one of the one time like this, one of the politicians just came up and said he wanted to build a highway, what they call the super highway, across this thick, pristine forest. Of course, the SDP was there to, from the back though, because we don't really go out as activists to face government. But of course, we supported and built the capacity of the communities to be able to stand up to the government and say no. Well, of course, we are grateful that the superhighway is more or less now a forgotten project. So we have a lot of them like that. We have mining that is even impacting on the health of very, very young people, which is really, really a big concern. These children are taken to the fields to go and mine. Some of them can just drop into, I have been to several of these places before. Some of them can just drop into the pits, and that will be the all. for the life of that young fellow. And then some of them, they get all manner of health issues as a result of going there to do the work that is not supposed to be. And I think one of the reasons I was just to add to what others have said, the reason from our own perspective, one is ignorance. Because when you go to some of these communities, the ignorance, poverty are the main things that are affecting, that are the drivers of environmental crimes. Some of them, when these maybe private companies, illegal mining companies, illegal logging companies come into the community, they just pay them peanuts and then they sell out their community forest to the loggers. They sell out their community forest to the miners because, number one, of poverty and, of course, because of ignorance. So these are some of the important things. And, of course, following that is governance issues. Because even it is one thing for the people to be aware of what is happening to them. It is another thing for there to be political will to be able to address this by the people that matter, who are in the government. So these are some of the issues that we have faced in working with civil society organizations and with community organizations. So what I want to now, just because of time, is so what I'm trying to say is that even the 2063 agenda, as far as I am concerned, the most important thing there for me is the political independence of Africa, because it is very important. If Africa is able to run its own politics the way it wants without interference from outside, interference in terms of the motives, because when you see some things that are happening, then you wonder whether this interference actually meant well for Africa or not. And so if Africa is able to have that political independence to be able to run its system, I want to believe that every other thing will almost fall in line. Good governance will fall in line. Economic issues will be addressed, poverty, education, and all that will be addressed. So these are some of the things. So the recommendations I have is political will. How do we drive political will? And one of the things that came up to me now is that I remember is that in this meeting, for example, I want to ask the organizers, and I think this will be a food for thought for all of us, especially the environmentalists, the experts among us, that when we are talking, when we are having meetings, we should make effort to invite the political class to the meetings. I remember one of the meetings that we had that it was just, I want to say it was just by a mistake or so, that somebody from the National Assembly in Nigeria was invited to this meeting. And of course, after everybody finished speaking, he said, all of you are just talking to yourselves. How many of you have brought this issue to the National Assembly? How many of you have gathered all of us together to be able to, because, and then you see the reason why we have to continue to do this is because every time, maybe every 4 years, there is a change of guard. There's a change of, so new people came in and they probably don't know. There are some decisions that even our president took recently that we keep on wondering. Those of us that know the implications of these MOUs and MOUs that were signed with some international communities, we were wondering whether the president actually had environmental experts trying to advise him on some of the decisions that have been taken. So one of the things when I put down political will, how do we drive this political will? How do we get this political class to understand what we are talking about? Some of them, yes, I know that some may not be interested, but I bet you there will still be some of them that all they need is education. And of course, in a way, if you appeal to their conscience and let them know the implication of this, not just even to them, but to generations unborn, I want to believe that some of them will be interested. And then another issue is the issue of policy development.
Thank you very much for that challenge. Your session was more of a challenge for us. Thank you very much for challenging us to do better and to take actionable steps towards our goal. Thank you very much. So next session, I have Dr. David McNair, and you'll be speaking on the role of evidence-based advocacy for environmental justice. I'll read his bio and then we'll bring him up. So David McNair is the Executive Director, Global Policy at one organization fighting for healthy lives, and economic opportunity. He sits on the European Council on Foreign Relations Council and is a founding executive board member of the Africa Europe Foundation. Previously, he worked on successful campaigns to reduce child mortality and crack down on grand corruption and tax evasion. In 2012, he was named one of the 99 top foreign policy leaders under 33. He holds a PhD in social geography from the Queen's University of Belfast. Please, everyone, welcome with me, David McNair.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I've already learned a lot about environmental crime and environmental protection from the previous speakers. So one thing I wanted to do was to share a little bit about the things that we have learned at the One campaign around combining evidence-based advocacy, political analysis, citizen activism, and accountability in order to achieve change, particularly on the financing agenda. But I think it's more applicable more broadly on regulation, on national legislation, and so on. And in a moment, I'd love to share my screen if it's possible to grant me access. But before I do, I just want to share a little bit about the One campaign, which was set up 20 years ago. And the idea was really centered around justice and the idea that, particularly at that time, the HIV and AIDS crisis was kind of really at the top of the agenda. Millions of people were dying every year. And treatments were available, but they weren't available to everyone, and they were incredibly costly. So a big part of what we did was to advocate for governments to reduce the cost of treatments and scale up financing for access to antiretrovirals. And in part, as a result of that advocacy, there are about 65 million people alive today because they got access to those drugs that otherwise wouldn't be. Similarly, we've kind of advocated on the scale up of vaccines and for financing for about 1 billion children to be vaccinated against preventable disease. But we've also done a lot on domestic finance, and particularly looking at the debt agenda and the way in which governments are struggling to finance environmental issues and health and education because the cost of debt is so high, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the way that we have done it is to combine an evidence base for proposals that we know work and are kind of non-partisan politically, with a smart political strategy to bring people on board, and then using citizen activism through petitions, through stunts, through communication on social media to kind of raise awareness of issues and increase the kind of political pressure on politicians to act. And then very detailed follow-up on the implementation of pledges or pieces of legislation that are made. And in that time, I talked about debt, I talked about the work on global health, but we've also done a lot of work on grand corruption and on the transparency of banking and legal systems in Europe and North America, which have facilitated such a massive outflow of finance from Africa. And a lot of that was stimulated by a corrupt deal that was done over an oil block called OPL 245, which was a deal done by the oil companies Shell and Eni, and involved a $1 billion bribe channeled through an anonymous shell company that resulted in losses to the Nigerian government in the billions, but also facilitated additional environmental crimes as a result of that. So in using this methodology of like evidence-based policy, data and tracking, citizen activism, and political analysis, we've been able to mobilize about $1.2 trillion over the past 20 years to support our people and our planet. And one thing that I wanted to show you was a little bit on the kind of data-based accountability that we do. So if you look at, and this is not specifically environmental crime, but we know that finance is such an important driver of so much government action. And if you look at the estimates for the need for the energy transition, for climate action, and for the Sustainable Development Goals, for emerging markets, excluding China, the needs are about 1.75 trillion a year. At least that's the spending gap. So a big part of what we've been doing is to use data to track where that money should come from, and there are estimates around, part of it should come from domestic government resources, part from the World Bank and other multilateral development banks, partly from aid, partly from bilateral funding. And we spend a lot of time kind of looking through and tracking the data on where this money is coming from. Another big part of what we do is look at the debt landscape. And if you can see this page, and I put the link in the chat if you want to take a look at these, but a big part of the financing challenge, particularly for African countries, is the increasing burden of debt. As you can see, since 2009 to 2023, the debt burden has almost doubled. And most of that increase has come from debt to private creditors, which are largely Wall Street or City of London institutions. And the cost of that debt is really high. So we're doing a lot of work to basically try and use this South African chair of the G20 to reduce the cost of capital and free up more money that governments could then invest in pursuing environmental crimes and supporting the climate transition. And through these data dives, we've got details on lots of different countries, but if we just look at Nigeria, you can see that there's about 21 billion in multilateral debt, and about 16 billion or 17 billion in private debt. And as a result of the shifts in the interest rate environment, the costs of servicing that debt have really skyrocketed. So I'll just go down here and pull up Nigeria. But basically you can see that as a proportion of government expenditure, debt service is much, much higher than health or education. And we don't have the data right here on environmental protection, but I imagine the debt service costs are much higher as well. So we're doing a lot of work around trying to use this data to make the case that if we were to reduce the cost of capital, it could free up so much more money in the region of 10s, 20, 30, 40 billion across the African continent to spend every year in a way that is owned by government and can be, where governments can be held to account by citizens for expenditure on environmental protection and other issues. The third issue I wanted to share was just the issue of climate finance. And you may have been tracking the recent COP and the agreement around a $300 billion a year commitment on advanced economies providing climate finance. What there wasn't in that debate, and far too few people understand, is the lack of accountability around defining what climate finance is and tracking where it goes. And we did a lot of forensic work to basically look at the databases around climate finance over the last 8 years. And we found that nearly 2/3 of climate commitments from advanced economies from the OECD countries were either never dispersed or had nothing to do with climate change. And that included some really egregious examples, like funding airports, funding fossil fuel projects. There was a couple of examples in Italy where they counted investment in ice cream shops as a response to climate change adaptation, i.e. it's getting hotter, so they need more ice cream. But they're counting this as climate finance, and finance that should be invested in building resilience and protecting the environment. So a big part of what we've been doing is to try and push for a more tight definition of what climate finance is, and pursuing the OECD and other standard setters to say, actually, we need to kind of keep a very close eye on where this money is going, the impacts that it's having, and that the governments that are kind of pledging this and announcing this as a commitment should be held to account for where it's going, both in Africa, but also in G20 countries. So I'll maybe stop there, but that's a bit of the kind of data analysis that we do. And if you wanted to learn more about this, you can go to data.one.org, and we have all these data sets. And a big part of what we'd love to do is collaborate around using this data, because we've seen so many times that, if you just make statements as an activist, government can easily ignore it. Journalists can easily ignore it. If you have very clear, robust data and you say this is the situation, it's very difficult to ignore. So we'd love to find ways of gathering data, presenting data, working with you to get this data into the hands of decision makers so that they act on climate and on environmental protection. And with that, I'll stop. But I'd love to talk more about this with any of you that are interested in discussing it.
Thank you so much, David. We have questions already, and we'd like to take them after the next session. So everyone, I'm sure David is happy to have your questions. Let's hold on till the next session, and then it would answer your questions. Thank you again, David, for that session. Thanks. So up next. Okay, I didn't know I was muted. So I said I'll bring up Dr. Adedoyin Adeleke of Growth Africa to speak more on EcoJustice Africa. Is Dr. Adedoyin around?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Only it's a bit dark. I've left my solar-powered office. We're trying to get the solar system here. All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone, and my special appreciation to all the speakers, David, Professor Damilola, Honorable Toyosi, Mrs. Ibironke, Dagnet. I really appreciate everyone, and Judy, who joined from the US. Thank you so much, and to all the participants, we are sincerely very grateful. I'm particularly excited, and I'm almost throwing off my PowerPoint because the issues that have been raised from the previous presentation all of them spoke specifically as though we planned the EcoJustice Africa initiative together. But because of the specificity of my presentation, specifically talking about the initiative itself and the solution we have come up with, which we're launching today, I will still want to use my presentation. But honestly, we've had a very, very robust conversation and deliberation. So I'll move, can you move to the next slide, please? Next slide. Next. I think I used, so, I mean, as it's been well established, the environmental adaptive capacity of the environment really is very crucial to the ecosystem resources and services that we all depend on for our livelihood, social and economic wise. We all depend on ecosystem resources and services, which are crucial, as Professor Damilola also established, very crucial to the access of human rights, respect of rule of law, peace and security, as Mrs. Sibironke mentioned, cited several cases, rivers, Cross River and all that, and also socio-economic prosperity. But as we have environmental crimes and violations, depleting the environmental adaptive capacity of our ecosystem, we are losing the ecosystem resource and services, which negatively impacts the exercise of human rights, respect of rule of law, peace and services, peace and security and socio-economic prosperity. Yes, please, next. And you find that environmental crimes actually exacerbate already existing climate change, biodiversity loss, nature degradation, and all of that. Now, from studies which is well established in literature, we find that environmental crime are more prevalent, particularly in developing countries like Africa, in the rural and remote communities, outside the reach of the conventional government system, security system, and the media. Therefore, many of these environmental crimes go almost unnoticed and unchecked. And people have thought about different approaches and employ different approaches to address these issues. And one that came very clear to be very effective is local environmental policing. But in African context, we have diverse limitations to local environmental policing. And one is obscurity. Communities where even the police are not even represented. For instance, we held a press conference hosting about 9 media organizations together and some outside Nigeria as well. And we were discussing with them, we find out that the environmental issues are not coming up in the media because it's very expensive. So somebody will fly down to Umuleri village just to capture one event. It's very expensive for them. So therefore, it's many of those environmental crimes happen, and then they are literally unchecked and unpronounced in the media. Also, the other thing is this relationship between the government and the people. How many persons can address assess our policymakers? Mr. Broker spoke about having government representative. Of course, that's very crucial. We did actually invited a member of the House of Rep. He's unavoidably absent, but he will still be on one of our shows very recently. On Saturday, we were with the former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, in his house. We try to engage with the political class, particularly those who have a say in policymaking and the legislature, and also the commissioner, that's Honorable Toyosi Thomas. However, that's at our level, and because somehow we've grown a bit, we have a bit of access. What about the citizens? Ordinary citizens, how many of them can walk up to even their local government commissioner, local government chairman? So there is a gulf between the government and the people. And again, government bureaucracies, which is very related. And again, many of these natural resources, if you check our laws in Nigeria, for instance, and other African countries, you realize that the management and the custody of many of the natural resources are within the national government, not at the local level. Therefore, let's take, for instance, something happening in Maiduguri. How will somebody fly down to Abuja, for instance, to report to the government, spend time, rent hotel, trying to go there, and then he wants to see the minister or something, and all of that. So there is the impact on time and investment constraints that limits how environmental crime can be reported, even when people are willing. And again, the issue around victimization. Many of the environmental crime going on across Africa, actually, when you check the regulatory agencies that have the mandate over that resource, you find that somebody's involved somehow. Therefore, people don't feel safe. The trust is not there because the guy they are reporting to, that lady they are reporting to at the government office, most likely is possibly one of the syndicates. So there is also this issue of backfire and then victimization. So some of these issues are the issues that have limited this very beautiful solution to our combating environmental crime, which is community environmental policing. And this is exactly what we have come up with to use a citizen-led and technology-enabled approach to address this issue. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so we are launching the EcoJustice Africa initiative. Now, it's a 7-solution pillar initiative that address different areas of all the problems I've mentioned, and some of which I have not mentioned because of time. So EcoJustice Africa, we developed two major tools. One is a mobile application. It's Green Growth Watch. If you check right now on your, please be back. You can be back, the previous slide. Yeah, if you check your Google App Store as we speak, you'll find Green Growth Watch. Green as in color, growth as in development, and then watch as in seeing. The app is already there, up and running, which we're going to be discussing shortly. So we developed the mobile app, and we also developed an online television station, a studio, and a data analytics center right here in the city of Abuja, where we'll be coordinating all of these affairs from. So, but first, we're setting up the EcoJustice Africa Fellowship Program. Now, we're going to be working with environmental activists, environmental actors, leaders of CSOs at the grassroots in rural communities who already have an established network or relationship, understand the context and the contextual issues around the environment and intricacies at the local level. We're going to be empowering them on different topics in terms of effective advocacy. We're not into advocacies and that are bully or something. No, empowering them, educating them, and then when we empower them and educate them, they will become in-country ambassadors across the African continent, who will now go back to their local communities where they already have access to people, gather people together at the local level, most probably in their local languages. Educate all the citizens through environmental education, of course, awareness first, and then structured education and education for sustainable development. Now, there are two different things. Environmental education speaks to, building understanding about the environment, but education for sustainable development links environment to their livelihood. So for them not just understand the environment, we need the environment on one side, but we need the environment for ourselves. And with that knowledge and exposure, they understand, just like Mrs. Brunke was talking about, many of them just take some peanuts and then give their lands for deforestation, illegal mining, all of that. When they're empowered and they understand how crucial these resources and the sustainability are to their livelihood, they will not take peanuts for it. And then all of them become active and empowered. In fact, we'll make them understand their environmental rights. Many people are not even aware about all those stuff. So now making each citizen to be eco advocates. So we have eco fellows working at the local level to empower citizens to be eco advocates. Immediately after that, as part of the empowerment, next slide, please. As part of the, okay, we're going to have two streams of the eco fellowship. One are the feed fellows, those are the CSOs I've just spoken about. But there are also the media eco fellows. We hosted some of them yesterday from about 9 media organizations within Nigeria and 6 outside Nigeria. You know, we're going to have them, those who can support when citizens send their reports in from their local communities through the mobile app, which I will explain shortly. We have eco fellows who are in the media who can help us amplify the voice of the people at the local level to the government within their respective countries by turning them into news stories from their newsrooms. So that's basically the difference between feed eco fellows and media eco fellows. Next slide, please. And then you have the mobile app. So once, as part of the empowerment of citizens at the local level, well, apart from educating them, environmental education, ESD, and all of that, and about their environmental rights, we now begin to empower them with the mobile app. Indeed, the United Nations has actually done very well in terms of declaring access to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right. But there is a gap between declaration and action. So turning that declaration into action on the African continent is the reason why we're setting up the EcoJustice Africa. So this Green Growth Watch app, it's high-tech mobile app, I can tell you. You take a photo with it for security reasons. You don't even have to write all the story there. Just take a photo, you can leave the place. It's safe there. And in case anybody collects your phone after taking a picture with it, if they search your phone, they will never see it. It's really a high-tech mobile application that we have developed that's also secure the people. Now, with the mobile app, they're able to capture our reports, and then that is received in the situation room. I'm currently speaking from a situation room somewhere in Asokoro in Abuja, where we have data analytics center, we have the media section. So the report is received from the citizens from across Africa at the data verification engagement analytics center, where those reports are verified through AI, the number of technological tools, including engagement. Remember that we have eco fellows at the local level. So when anybody sends a report from us from Cross River, for instance, we have somebody there who can call. Please help us to confirm. We have also partnership across the continent that we can call to also check some of these things. Now, once they are confirmed and verified using technological and social engagement tools, then we don't necessarily want to make bad news public. So the idea, our first approach, is to engage with the agency that has mandate over that area. For instance, agency of government, to say, okay, this and this has been reported and verified. Please, could you please help address it? If they address it, they will come to the media and celebrate them. So you have good news about what they have done, about environmental action. However, everybody wants to look good online. In case we're trying to contact them and they're not yielding, we use social media tools to get their attention. But again, not bullying. All right, it's effective. You know, the essence of advocacy is to get results. If we go out there to bully and do negative stuff just to spoil their name, we will not get results. So we'll fail, basically. But what we're doing is positive, result-oriented advocacy. You know, we literally want to become partners with them, not their watchdog. if you permit me. So now, when that is reported, analyzed, verified, we engage with the people, with the agency, including even the people that are corporate, some of those things. And we hope that all of these issues that we receive will be sorted through those means. And with that, we'll also be building, some of our speakers spoke about data. We'll be having real-life data, first of its kind across the continent, as a digital map. As we are reporting some of those the environmental crime, they are creating the dots on the African continent as a digital map, which we're going to have, and we're able to support policy action and legislative reforms on the African continent at country level and at the continental level. Next slide, please. Next slide. So basically, in summary, as citizens, no, please go back. As citizens, you capture. Can you go back to the next previous slide? Yeah, you capture, documents, and report. And you can choose to be anonymous. There are tools there that you can just choose. And all we'll do when we are doing advocacy and engagement, we protect you all the way, and then some of those issues. So if you notice, you find that you don't need time to be traveling up and down to a government agency. You're not exposed to risk and security risk. And though the time constraint is covered, government bureaucracy is literally addressed or shortcut, because you don't have to really interface with them as citizens. We do that on your behalf. And, just next slide. As part of the program, we have built a media section of the EcoJustice room where we invite people who are willing to speak, so citizens that are willing to speak, or people, stakeholders around this that have sort of, they hold a stake around the issues reported, to have debates, policy dialogues about some of these things, bringing governments and the citizens together on the same platform. Actually, that section of the initiative has been running since some 3 months ago now. And with the app now, really we're going to scale up. So basically, when you submit the report, it's received, reviewed, verified, and then we escalate through all these means I've mentioned. All right, next slide. And we had a press conference yesterday. If you check Guardian newspaper in Nigeria, if you check Leadership Today, if you check The Nation, you have our reports already there. Others are coming. And we told them yesterday that whatever we can vocalize, whatever we can amplify, is not the peak of our success. It's not the peak of the success of the initiative. The peak of the success of the initiative is how I can get channels to pick my verified reports from African country and help us to amplify it with their millions of viewers. How I can get Arise TV, I can get CNBC. So the big success of this initiative lies in our partnership, particularly with the media, mainstream media organizations. We are setting up something we call Green Growth Journalist Network, where we'll be sharing with them. Once we verify them, we'll amplify on our end, but we'll also have them to also help us to amplify on our side. All right, next slide, please. So theory of change, basically empowering, we're going to be empowering the local environmental actors, that's the Eco Fellowship, who will now support us at the grassroots in doing environmental education and ESD for the citizens. And leveraging on digital technology and media platforms, both ours and those of the mainstream media organizations, will be driving evidence-based policy advocacy. And we'll be using those data we are getting as well for data-driven policy reforms and legislative action. And that's all about the EcoJustice Africa. I think my colleague will be speaking about EcoJustice Africa and you as citizens, as environmental actors, what you can do. Thank you very much. Next slide. So we want to, before I close, we want to sincerely appreciate the Worldwide Fund for Nature. They actually have supported this, the setting up of this initiative. And indeed, we're looking, because it's been, the support is almost expiring, and we're really looking out to engage with new organizations that could also support us as we implement this. But we really want to appreciate WWF for generous support for the development of mobile app. The mobile app is currently on, live, and very active and fully operational on Google App Store as we speak. Thank you very much. Yeah, next slide. I think that's all. Yeah, thank you so much. And over to you, the moderator.
From the air we breathe to the food on our plates, nature's hidden work keeps you and I alive and flourishing. The essential services nature offers us, fresh water, fertile soil, climate stability, and food production, sustain our quality of life, livelihoods, health, peace, and foster socioeconomic development. Sadly, criminal activities like illegal mining, deforestation, and wildlife trafficking, among others, are stripping the environment. From the air we breathe to the food on our plates, nature's hidden work keeps you and I alive and flourishing. The essential services nature offers us, fresh water, fertile soil, climate stability, and food production, sustain our quality of life, livelihoods, health, peace, and foster socioeconomic development. Sadly, criminal activities like illegal mining, deforestation, and wildlife trafficking, among others, are stripping the environment of its ability to deliver these essential ecosystem services, putting both the planet and human lives in grave danger. In Africa, environmental violations are rampant in rural, remote communities, areas largely beyond the reach of government, media, and conventional security systems. From the air we breathe to the food on our plates, nature's hidden work keeps you and I alive and flourishing. The essential services nature offers us, fresh water, fertile soil, climate stability, and food production, sustain our quality of life, livelihoods, health, peace, and foster socioeconomic development. Sadly, criminal activities like illegal mining, deforestation, and wildlife trafficking, among others, are stripping the environment of its ability to deliver these essential ecosystem services, putting both the planet and human lives in grave danger. In Africa, environmental violations are rampant in rural, remote communities, areas largely beyond the reach of government, media, and conventional security systems. Those who dare to report these crimes risk severe threats, victimization, and even their lives, leaving many to suffer in silence. The result? Lives, livelihoods, and human rights are eroded, ecosystems are degraded, and communities become increasingly vulnerable to climate shocks. To combat environmental crimes and empower citizens to exercise their rights to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, Green Growth Africa launches EcoJustice Africa. This citizen-driven, tech-enabled initiative allows you to document and report environmental crimes in your community in real time through the Green Growth Watch mobile app. From illegal logging to hazardous waste dumping, your phone becomes a tool for justice. Simply snap a photo or video, choose a crime category, add details, and submit your report. Once submitted, your reports are sent to the EcoJustice Situation Room, where experts verify each case using advanced technology and stakeholder collaboration. Verified cases are then escalated for advocacy through direct stakeholder engagement, social media campaigns, and Green Growth Television, where they feature in news reports, debates, and dialogues, driving both policy reforms, legislative and judicial actions. Throughout the entire process, citizen reporters can choose to be anonymous, protecting them from risks, threats, or victimization. To facilitate effective grassroots mobilization and engagement, environmental activists who are already working with local communities will be recruited through an EcoJustice Fellowship initiative. The Eco Fellows will be trained and empowered to provide grassroots coordination, training for citizens, and verification of citizen reports. Imagine that with phone, you can be a change maker without the exposing yourself to risk, threat, or victimization. EcoJustice Africa also takes away huge time and financial investment required to visit government office to make report, while enabling you to speak and be heard by government and other stakeholders. EcoJustice Africa is raising citizens as a new generation of environmental activists and redefining environmental advocacy to achieve an environmentally just Africa, where citizens are aware and able to exercise their environmental rights. Together, we can combat environmental crime to build a greener and more just Africa. Join the movement right away by 1. Partnering with us. 2. downloading the Green Growth Watch app. And 3. Subscribing to our YouTube channel for a sustainable and just Africa. EcoJustice Africa is leading the way. Will you join us?
or reporters for environmental issues, particularly in stopping environmental crimes. And so in the next few slides, I would like us to do 3 things. So the first thing I would like us to do is to, yes, sign up to our Green Growth TV on YouTube. So please, can you kindly give me 2 minutes of your time? So can you scan the QR code that you can see on my screen? And when you scan this QR code, it's going to take you to our Green Growth TV studios on YouTube. And when it takes you there, kindly subscribe to our TV. So that's just what I need you to do for the next 2 minutes. So please, when you do that, just type done in the chat box. So I just need you to sign up to our Green Growth TV on YouTube. And now, why do I need to sign up to our Green Growth TV on YouTube? Now, as Dr. Adedoyin mentioned, we collate information in our situation room. And when we collate the information in our situation room, that's the data that you send when you get to download the app, which we'll soon be doing. Data you send when you witness any environmental violation or environmental crime happening in your environment is going to be sent to a situation room. And when we verify those reports in our situation room, the next thing we'll be doing is to escalate it into shows, interviews, etc. on our Green Growth TV. So the only way you'll be able to catch up with these latest updates that we're coming up with, what we are doing at EcoJustice Africa, is when you subscribe to our Green Growth TV. So please kindly help us. I saw some questions in the chat box earlier that mentioned, oh, what are the next steps that we can do to support environmental justice in Africa? So this is the first step, very little step. Just sign up, subscribe to our Green Growth TV on YouTube. Thank you so much. All right, so the next step that I have for us this evening or this afternoon is to download the Green Growth Watch. So I'm sure you also see another QR code on your screen. Can I have some responses in the chat box? Let me know if you can see the QR code on the screen. All right, so if you can see the QR code on the screen, kindly scan it. And when you scan it, it's going to take you to the YouTube, the Play Store, Google Play Store, we are going to see the Green Growth Watch app. And when you see the Green Growth Watch app, please download and sign up to the Green Growth Watch app. So as our executive director mentioned earlier, the Green Growth Watch app is the tool that we created, digital tool that we created to ensure that anyone on the streets, no matter your background or where you are, we're able to capture live environmental violations that you see around you, and you're able to report it in a way that hides your identity or protects your identity, and will definitely get to people that can make the change and do something around it. So if you want to join us, kindly scan the QR code that you can see on your screen, and it will take you to Google Play Store, where you will see the Green Growth Watch app. And when you see the Green Growth Watch app, kindly download the app and sign up to the app. So I'd love to see responses in the chat box as we are doing that. All right, so the final task I have for us today is to download and sign up to the Green Growth DigiHub app. So the QR code is also on the screen, and if you scan it, it's going to take you to Google Play Store, where you would see the Green Growth DigiHub app. So what is the Green Growth DigiHub, or what is the app Green Growth DigiHub about? So earlier this year, we launched another app, which is a convergence network for green growth activists, policymakers, experts, etc. around the globe. So on the app, you'll be able to connect with other environmentalists, everybody, regardless of your profession, that is interested in green growth. And you'll also be able to highlight your projects. You'll be able to share green growth opportunities on the platform. So the end is just to have like a Facebook or a LinkedIn for green growth professionals and enthusiasts. So if you are interested in that, kindly scan the QR code on your screen, and it's going to take you to Green Growth DigiHub, Green Growth DigiHub app on Play Store. And when you get to Play Store, kindly download the app and sign up to the Green Growth DigiHub app. And also for our certificates, we'll be uploading them to the Green Growth DigiHub app. So for you to be able to download the certificates, you would also have to download and sign up to the app if you have not done that already. So that is why we also have this here, so that you'll be able to access your certificates. So let me see some responses in the chat box. All right, so thank you so much, everyone, for having me. Once again, thank you for staying on the call. And I'll just go over everything again. So first of all, let me know if you have subscribed to our YouTube channel.
I have one answer, one question. How can get a certificate in this panel? Hello? Hello? Please?
Sorry, you can see the QR code that is currently on our screen. So when you scan it, it will take you directly to our Green Growth Watch app on Google Play Store, and just download and sign up. And you'll be able to access right in your hands at the tip of your fingers the tool that you need to report environmental violations and crimes that you see in your environment in a way that will help policymakers to take proper action. And of course, completely anonymously, your identity is safe. And finally, for my task for us today, kindly scan the QR code on your screen and download and sign up to the Green Growth DG Hub. And as I mentioned, the Green Growth DG Hub is like a LinkedIn for green growth professionals and enthusiasts. So you get visibility for your projects, you access opportunities, you network with like-minded persons and all that. So yes, that is all I have for us today. Thank you very much for joining so far. Thank you for your participation. As I mentioned, every email as regards certificates or any other information you need to know will be sent to our emails after this call and tomorrow. And just watch out for your emails throughout the week. Finally, I'll be handing over to Dipo Adedoyin to take the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome us once again to this session. I hope somebody is hearing me. I hope it's not just that I'm taking a... Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, you are heard.
Okay, good afternoon again. Good afternoon again. We have highlighted some questions for some of our facilitators. And the first one goes to Madam Ibironke Olu Bamishe. And the question we have here is that how can we reach people in the rural area with this message about environmental justice, enabling them to fight environmental violations and crime? I hope Madam Ibironke is still with us. I hope she can tackle that question.
I think you can raise the questions. Is she around? I thought she left. She dropped a message that she was leaving. But let's see many of those questions that we can address, and the ones that are specific to her, maybe our office or wherever, then we can pass to her. So do you want to ask all the questions together and maybe in batches, and then I can respond? Seems we lost Mr. Dipo. Okay, go ahead, sir.
All right. That's the first question. Should I just read out all the questions?
No, okay. So maybe we'll do it three questions per response. But while you're looking at all the other questions, let me just respond to that. So thank you so much to the person that asked the question. Like I mentioned in presentation of the EcoJustice Africa, we are going to be having Eco Fellows. We are going to be having Eco Fellowship program where we're going to be recruiting some CSO people, CSO actors, environmental activists, and environmental actors at the local level to organize, leverage on their network in their local community to now pass on the message. But before then, we'll be training them. So we'll train the Eco Fellows, empower them, and then they can pass on the message at the local level. And such people can be our representative at the local level across all African countries. If we have maybe 2 persons, 3 persons per local government, that's about more than 1,500 people in Nigeria alone. You can imagine other countries. So the initiative is going to get down to the local level. Thank you so much. So maybe now 3 questions, and then we'll take it on.
Okay. The second question here is, how can EcoJustice be achieved in the face of a weak judicial system in Nigeria? And I feel by extension, it should be in the entire sub-Saharan Africa. And what is the role of contemporary justice system in EcoJustice implementation? This question is strictly being directed to Professor Damilola. The third question I have is, what action plans should we implement in terms of short, medium, and long term to prevent impacts of environmental crimes against women, girls, and children? This question is addressed to David McNair. I hope he's still around. The third one in this series is, how can we ensure that eco-justice initiatives are not only environmentally sustainable, but also economically and socially inclusive? This question is being directed to Professor Damilola. So those are the three questions. I think
is any of the speakers
your mic
around?
is
Okay, let me attempt to respond to them, the three you have raised, and then we'll see how we can get the questions to all these other speakers, and then they will respond. All right, so let me respond to these three quickly. One, how do we address eco-justice, environmental crime issue within the weak judicial system? That's why you saw in my presentation, I mentioned that our first point of call is direct engagement. We want to see how best we can leverage on direct engagement. Even apart from the weakness, is the delay. Some cases start in courts, and then 5 years you are still in courts. And then how many persons, because of environmental issue, will still be expending money. So we want to see, first of all, what we can achieve with direct engagement with these people. And now you realize that there's some procurement we have done in Growth Africa. We don't know the vendor. All we know is that this person has a strong social media presence. Therefore, and he markets his goods on social media. So we know that he will not want to misbehave with social media. So now, because of the strength of social media and the relevance, we're also going to be leveraging on that. But everybody wants to look good online. So by the time you bring a case of direct engagement is not listening, and then we bring it on social media, the person will most likely say, only few cases will go to court. And by the way, one aspect of this program I didn't talk about is strategic litigation. So on extreme cases that through direct engagement, social media engagement, we're not able to get results for some few cases, we're going to embark on strategic litigation. But those are tools that we can use to at least address most of them before we now look at what we can look at judicial system. And this addresses the issue of a contemporary judicial system. Now, the contemporary judicial system, like Professor Debla mentioned, there is no country, as we speak, that has actually legalized and criminalized, rather, environmental crime on the continent. So we're going to be leveraging on other existing laws. There are other existing laws that we can leverage on, particularly when we trace the impacts of environmental impact on the people, and particularly on social and economic development. So we're going to be leveraging on that to pursue, and we can all, not only us, you can also do that, to leverage on some of those impacts on the people to prosecute those cases in the law court. And action plan, what can we do to look at the impact of, to address and curb the impact of environmental crime on children, women, all of that. That's why we brought up this program, such that cases that are happening in places that the government are not aware, now they cannot claim they're not aware. We're going to bring it down to them. By the time you look at the app, in the app, if you are reporting a case, you directly tell us, who do you think has the mandate on this? Oh, this local government chairman is XYZ agency. When you mention them to us, we verify. Once we verify, we confirm these people you mentioned, are they the one that have the right mandate on this? And then we'll contact them directly. So that cases that are happening, impacting women, children, their businesses, their livelihoods, and even claiming lives can be curbed at the local level as much as we can. So you permit me to stop here because of time. We've really enjoyed our time. And all the other questions we'll collate. Mr. Dipo, please help us to collate them. And then by the name of the speakers. So we send them to the speakers and see, we'll share with the response. So we'll be going to be sending a follow-up email to you, and you're going to be receiving your certificate via the Green Code Teaching Up app. So it's good to download them, but there'll be a follow-up email on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. We appreciate.
Sir, can I add something?
Yes.
Studio, can you take over from here, please?
Yeah, yes.
Studio, can you take over from
I don't have any question. Do you hear me?
Go on, go on.
Yes, I want just to add that we in protecting or in in raising this concern of protecting the ecosystem, we shouldn't also forget the role of literature. The role of literature in raising this concern of protecting the earth, or in in protecting not only the landscape, but also on rising concern of how we as human must protect the other species, especially how this branch of ecosystem, how this branch of eco-criticism as a literary theory that examines the relationship between literature, culture, and the natural world, and how this also this branch of literature shows how literature helps us as a researcher or as a human being in general in reflecting, in reflecting and understanding the relationship between literature, culture, and the natural and the natural landscape or ecological issues. And we find how literature challenges or lead us to understand how to challenge this idea of anthropocentrism, the human ascendancy, that we are not the only living, or we are not the only being on the earth, but we have to share the same space with the other beings, with the other species, and how literature itself shows that we must find a solution from this for these factories, which emits CO2 into the air, which leads to acid rains. The acid rains come into the earth, which results in which results in soil erosion, and which affects aquatic animals, or the animals that live in water in the sea. And this is how literature serves as a basic or as a cornerstones in rising concern, or in showing how this environmental activism should be present, and how this environmental education is needed, and how literature can raise concern of environment, and it can educate us, or it can share ideas about how we need to protect the earth, to protect the other species, to challenge this idea of anthropocentrism, to challenge this idea of solastalgia, and how literature maybe as Lawrence Boyle talks about in environmental imagination, and in how especially and Castile talked about also in Silent Spring, about how these notions of herbicides and pesticides must be challenged, and it must be seen throughout literature. And I don't want to make this very long. And my point is, I don't have a question, but my point is how is that we must take into consideration also literature, because it serves as a basic in protecting the earth and